Phoenix and JoJo Igloo.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers here on the East Coast of the United States of America. Welcome you all to our broadcast. Folks, we have a lot to cover tonight in these 20 minutes to a half hour, but I do have some interesting news for our fine friends in Canada, something that I'm sure Justin Trudeau will not be happy with, but he's not such a very happy fellow anyway, is he? So, as you know, on Thursday nights, we do have a live broadcast here, strictly dedicated to the crisis in Canada. Now, why do we call what's going on in Canada a crisis? Because it's not only a crisis that is hindering the freedom and the liberty of Canadian citizens, but is a crisis, if not addressed, can spread here in the United States and around the world. And thankfully, the citizens of Canada have worked very, very hard to work within the framework of the law. They've been very patient, and they've been addressing this issue, I'd say, rather well, with a lot of courage and a lot of bravery. So we'll talk more about that this Thursday night. But what might not make Justin Trudeau happy is the fact that we're scheduling for Thursday night, March 31st, the Honorable Brian Peckford. He's a former Newfoundland Premier. Now, I spoke with him today on the phone. He has agreed to come on our broadcast on March 31st. I understand he is he's well liked and respected throughout Canada. And just by the opportunity I've had to speak with him, what a gentleman. It'll be an honor to have him on our broadcast. He's the Honorable Brian Peckford, former Newfoundland Premier. He will be on our broadcast Thursday night, March 31st, if all goes well. Now, I have also given Canadians the opportunity, grassroots Canadians, the moms, the dads, the grandmas, the grandpas, any citizen who would like to come on our broadcast. Well, we're going to give you the opportunity to do that. So all you have to do is email us, and I'm going to give you the most direct route you can get to us via email. Go to our website, go to the contact information bar, and it says contact us. And the website is campaign4america.com. campaign4america.com. And we'll have some of you come on. All right. We'll have some of you come on and to share your feelings and your thoughts with who? With the 200,000+ people who we understand are tuning in to this broadcast from time to time. We're averaging between 20 and 25,000 per week. But at one time, as I shared with you, we peaked out 252,000, which tells me that people are listening. It's so important, folks, for people around the world to hear what's going on in Canada, in the United States, in any freedom-loving country where some tyrant decides that he or she is going to take control of our lives. So we're committed to Canada. No matter what we are faced with here in America, we have to keep our eyes on the ball, right? We have to keep our eyes on our southern border. We have to keep our eyes on the northern border. So that's it, folks. So that's what we're going to do on this Thursday night and next Thursday night, March 31st. The former Newfoundland Premier, the Honorable Brian Peckford, will be joining us. Now, let's get to something that I haven't talked about very much because I like to listen and watch and see what's going on with regard to the politics in our nation. January 6th. Remember January 6th? Well, I haven't said much about that because I'm watching carefully what is unfolding. And I'm a person who likes to get facts. I ask a lot of questions and I do a lot of observing before I address an issue. But I could tell you this, that based on what I see and what I'm hearing, based on the conduct, if you will, of the congressional committee that is holding these hearings and investigating what went on January 6th at the Capitol, that there is no way possible that any American is going to believe any outcome that this committee comes up with. Any conclusion they come up with, nobody's going to believe it. At least I believe that. I can tell you I'm not going to believe it. And I'm a pretty well-balanced individual. I don't draw conclusions. I'm not into conspiracy theories. I like to see facts, but I like to see a lot of questions answered fairly. And this committee, folks, I've got to tell you, as far as I'm concerned, is a dog and pony show that's costing Americans a lot of tax dollars. Now, why do I call it a dog and pony show? And I know I'll be criticized for saying what I just said, but one of the great things about not being beholden to politicians or being beholden to any entity is that you could speak freely, say what you want. Now, of course, in politics, I did that, said what I want, I spoke freely, and I proved that you can do that and get reelected to office and on and on and on. So what it takes is, have some guts, men and women in office, get a little courage. Come on, stand up. And when it comes to those establishment politicians and those special interest groups who are scaring the daylights out of you, bullying you, and pretty much enslaving you to their will, stand up against them. What are they going to do to you? Take a few bucks from you? Unless they've got something on you, then you've got problems. Now, getting back to the congressional committee, I have never believed, folks, never in my life believed, especially after being involved in politics, that politicians should be investigating politicians. And that's what we have here with the January 6th Congressional Committee. That's exactly what's going on. We have a committee created by politicians who have what? There's no doubt a lot of these politicians on this committee have a personal vendetta against conservatives in this country. They have a personal vendetta against other politicians. We know that they have a personal vendetta against former President Donald Trump. So how much of a fair investigation goes on when you got the investigators who have all these personal vendettas against everybody that they're investigating? Maybe what we need to do is create an investigative committee to investigate the investigators. Wouldn't that be a riot? But anyway, by nature of their office, all right, most of these politicians who pursue these investigations are involving people from the opposite party. So the outcome is going to be something that will not help the Republican Party, not help conservatives in the country, in fact, not help American patriots, because most of the people on these committees, such as this, are Democrats, who in my view, and this is me talking, okay, who in my view have been influenced by who? And I said this all along, by the ideology of Marx, Lenin, and Stalin. I really believe that, folks. Nothing's going to change my mind. I've seen enough in my lifetime, 5-6 decades of politics and how this country runs down this road and that road. Never have I seen anything like this, what we're seeing today, other than the time Ronald Reagan was in office and he took care of business after he threw Jimmy Carter out of office and every Democrat along with him. And I hope that will happen in November of 2022. But most Americans, I believe this, whether you're Democrat or Republican, we believe that these politicians are morally bankrupt. I mean, look at the cast of characters on this congressional committee who are looking at the January 6th investigation. You think they're going to be fair? You think they're going to be able to put aside their personal biased opinions about anybody involving this investigation? Of course not. So in my view, folks, I've always believed that when there are investigations taking place, that they should be conducted by seasoned professional law enforcement officers, cops, street cops, investigators, detectives that have been on their job for 30 years, who know the ins and outs of investigation, who know what questions to ask, who know to do what, to answer. And you learned this in Police Academy 101, to answer the who, what, when, where, and why of an incident. Who, what, when, where, and why. That's where you begin. Now, if you remember, and I remember this clearly because this involves a a friend of mine. It involves a military leader who I respect dearly, who I actually worked for. Going back about a year or so ago, Nancy Pelosi appointed an Army general. Remember that? Retired Lieutenant General Russell Honore. He was appointed by Nancy Pelosi to lead a review of the security failures leading up to the Capitol 6th riot. All right. Now, here you have a domestic incident involving the DC police, the Capitol Police, maybe the FBI, other domestic law enforcement agencies, but she decides to go outside those agencies and bring an Army general in without any law enforcement experience to do what? To look at the failures that she says led up to the January 6th riot, the security failures. Now, let me say this, folks. I respect General Honore, good American patriot, a good general. I worked for him, and I wish him well. But that's friendship. An old friend of mine once said, friendship is friendship and business is business. Now, let's get to the business end of this. So part of his conclusion regarding the attack, which they call it the attack, the assault on the Capitol, part of the conclusion was this, and this is what troubled me. These are his words. He said that this was the result of propaganda that gave people a little BS about what they want to hear. Now, what he was saying is that what led up to this was a whole bunch of propaganda that were given to a lot of patriots, and they were given a lot of BS, and all they wanted to hear was what they wanted to hear, and that fired them up. You see, the issue is this, folks. I got a lot of questions that I'm going to ask tonight, but we're going to answer them next Monday. But with regard to this is the problem I have with this. There were thousands and thousands of American patriots at the Capitol peacefully protesting. The moms, the dads, the PTA mothers and fathers, and the football coaches and the basketball coaches. You know, the regular people working hard, paying their taxes. Thousands of them went there. But it was the few. It was the few. There's always the few who took advantage of that protest, and they came and they rioted. They call it an insurrection. I yet to hear of anyone being charged with insurrection. I could be wrong. I know there's charging, some have been charged with assaults, breaking public property, threatening, terroristic threats, etc. Haven't heard anything about anybody being charged or at least convicted of insurrection. But that's something they'll have to prove. If they've got the evidence, well, then they're going to have to prove it. But my point is this. So you get these other radical groups that come in, and they go out and they destroy the purpose of the protest. The purpose of the protest, folks, was destroyed by a bunch of radicals who probably had no business being there. Now, look, I am a strong supporter of law enforcement. I believe, after seeing a lot of the videos that where cops were assaulted, there was breaking of property, there were things that went on were illegal, and any good American, any good person, any person with common sense would say those people who caused the chaos and carnage and threatened people and assaulted cops, they should be put in jail. Simple as that. You don't do that. You don't do that. We are not like that. Americans should stand up like the Canadians did during their protests. No violence. You know, they probably had a few characters there that tried to commit violence, but the people of our country, I'm talking about the good people who protest, they do it peacefully. They do it within the framework of the law. So we have a problem. We have a problem where you get a few bad apples, and there were a lot of these few bad apples, who took control of that protest January 6th. And what they did was they destroyed what the intent of that protest was. The intent of that protest never was aired on the air. It was all about what these, and I don't have any other word, you don't have to call names, but I have no other word for this, what these idiots did. Because you don't break into buildings, you don't commit crimes, and you don't assault cops. You don't do that. Now, people are saying, and I believe it, there were some things that went on that the police should not have done. Well, we're going to get to that in a minute. Like I said, I'm fair, and I try to do the best I could to bring all kinds of perspectives in. Now, keep in mind, folks, that General Honore, again, a good professional soldier, no doubt about it. But he's not a professional law enforcement officer. He has never, at least to my knowledge, conducted any type of domestic security survey, any type of police department management inquiry. He's never done anything like that. In fact, I don't think he's ever been involved in any type of law enforcement action other than maybe Hurricane Katrina. He went down there. I was down there, by the way, when the Hurricane Katrina hit. He went to New Orleans and he did a marvelous job in restoring and preventing crime and restoring law and order. No violence. He did his job very, very well. But unfortunately, I believe that he was used. He was used as a political pawn for Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats to do what? To give them the very thing that he says that the patriots were given. He says, remember what I said, that they were given a lot of BS and they only heard what they wanted to hear. Well, I believe the general gave the committee people, Pelosi, Adam Schiff, that whole crew, I believe he gave them what they wanted to hear. I really believe that. I don't know why he accepted that position, but he did. But, when people do things a little bit out of their realm, I know my limitations. If I'm asked to do something in a field that I am unaware of, I don't do it. I'm an expert in a couple of fields, but not in every field. I think he should have stayed out of it. So now the question is this. What would seasoned law enforcement officers ask? What questions would they want answered with regard to an investigation such as this? These are questions that should be answered, but probably never will be answered, because if they do get answered, we might be led down paths that the committee doesn't want to be led down. Now, let's talk about this for a minute, okay? So I talked to a group of police officers, and I asked them, well, if you were in charge of this investigation, how would you start it? What questions would you ask, and where would you seek the answers? So, folks, like I said, I'm going to go through a list of questions that we would ask, law enforcement professionals would ask to start the investigation. I'm not going to answer them tonight. I'm going to answer them next week. I'm giving them to you now so you could ponder these questions, ponder these thoughts, and compare that to what you've heard and what you haven't heard. And then next Monday night, we'll talk about it. All right, so question number one. What led up to the riot on January 6th? What led up to that riot? Does anybody know? Has the question been answered by the committee? No, because they may know what led up to that, and they're just not going to tell us because it doesn't fit the narrative that they possibly want us to hear. I could tell you, in my view, and in the view of certain other officers who I've talked to, believe there were two. There were two factors that led up to the January 6th riot. Two of them. One of them, and I'll tell you right now, and I'll lay it out right now. No, I do not believe, and I believe anyone with common sense will agree with me. I do not believe in any way, shape, or form that President Donald Trump was the cause of that riot. Absolutely not. When people tell me they believe he's the cause, that he added fuel to the fire, that to me, folks, is using him as a scapegoat. All right. And that is absolutely out of at least my thinking. And I'll qualify that next week. So there were two reasons we believe that incidents that led up to that. And one of the reasons, all right, one of the things that led up to that occurred over a long period of time, way before January 6th. So we'll talk about that next Monday night. What was the root cause of the January 6th riot? Now, was it the peaceful protesters? No, we know that. Then what was it? What was the root cause? What lit the match to cause that riot? Well, we think we have the answer to that. How about the subpoenas? Let's talk about that for a minute. Well, we hear the congressional committee is subpoenaing Donald Trump, his kids, his wife, family members, the White House chief of staff, everybody working in the White House. They're probably even subpoenaing the custodians of the buildings in Washington, D.C. They're going to subpoena everybody, their phone records, what they ate for lunch. Boy, they are going to be fishing and fishing and fishing. So that's what they're focusing on, right? But you notice they're not focusing on something that we as law enforcement professionals believe they should be focusing on. Look, it's okay, focus on all of that. But think about this, folks. How about issuing a subpoena to Nancy Pelosi? I'd like to know, and I think the American people should know, who was she talking with during that day on her phone, or a week before that incident, or a month, or even a year? Who was she talking with? I want to know about the conversation she had with the DC police, with the Capitol Police, with the Sergeant of Arms. Why don't we subpoena the DC Police Chief Staff? Let's get them to testify. Let's get the Chief of Police of the Capitol Police. Let's get the officers. In fact, I'll tell you what, if it was up to me, I would subpoena the entire police department, the entire DC Police Department, and the entire Capitol Police Department. Why? I'll tell you why, folks. Because in police world, believe me, those of you who are cops are watching, there are no secrets. The street cop, the guy or gal on a corner directing traffic, they know a lot. Why do they know a lot? Because they listen. Cops listen. There could be rumors. There could be all sorts of information back and forth. Well, that's where it begins. So if the top brass is not going to give information, if they are willing to lie under oath and lose their pensions, well, guess who we're going to find? We're going to find some cop out there who's going to say, wait a minute, I ain't falling on my sword for that person. And they're going to talk. So why don't we subpoena Nancy Pelosi's phone records and all that other stuff? Why don't subpoena Adam Schiff? Why don't we subpoena? In fact, I'd like to subpoena, if I was on the committee, the people on the committee. I want to know who they were talking with. I'd like to know if there's a conflict of interest. You see, folks, my case in point. That's why you don't have politicians doing these investigations. They're dirty. All right. Now, I'm not going to paint a broad brush. I know a lot of good people in politics are honest, dedicated men and women. Not too many, but enough to say, well, at least we've got some people in office who are honest. But these people on this committee, folks, I mean, it's mind-boggling. All this time they're investigating and they still can't come up with some sort of credible conclusion that they could give the American people. Because it is not fitting their narrative. Absolutely not. But this will go on and on and on. And I suppose before the November elections of 2022 of this year, some big news will come out that the committee has discovered that some politician, whether it be Donald Trump or some Republican, somebody big in the Republican world is in trouble because the committee says they're in trouble. I don't believe it, folks. I don't believe it. And I'll tell you how it should work, folks. It should work when there are questions to be asked. It shouldn't be a political committee asking. It should be a grand jury. A grand jury of peer citizens, grassroots citizens, like we always do, folks, when it comes to people charged with crimes. Have a grand jury. Have a dozen grand juries. I don't care if you have 100 of them. But that's the most honest way. That's the most fairest way to approach these things. Let a grand jury decide who should be subpoenaed. Let a grand jury decide who should be questioned. And then have an unbiased, non-political, nonpartisan group of people investigate, like who? Like law enforcement professionals. My fifth grade teacher said I'm a dreamer. I used to dream a lot. And I wasn't the brightest star in classrooms, believe me. But we made it here, didn't we? And I guess some of the dreams that I have continue. My dream about this January 6th investigation is to have professional law enforcement officers investigate this. We got some of the best and brightest cops in every city and town across this country. NYPD, LAPD, small towns in Nebraska, New Jersey, Texas, you name the state. We got the best and brightest cops in the world right here in America. So we need to think about that moving forward. Maybe that's a way to handle these things, right? But again, I would trust law enforcement professionals doing an investigation, and I would trust decisions by grand juries, because grand juries are made up of who? Of you and of me. All right, so now the one big question I have involves a tragedy that occurred during the January 6th riot, and that was the shooting death of Ashley Babbitt. It seems like that young lady has been forgotten. It seems like that incident has been forgotten. And I'll tell you what, folks, the reason why I have a problem with that, now I opened up by telling you I'm pro law enforcement, been a cop 38 years. I'll defend cops to the hill, but I will not defend cops where there are some questions regarding their conduct. And what troubles me about this, anywhere in this country, anywhere in the United States, when there's a police-involved shooting, of course, there's an internal affairs investigation. when there is a death involved and there's some question with regard to that death, that is where a grand jury is convened. A grand jury is convened, and that grand jury is giving every bit of information leading up to and after a shooting death occurred. That did not happen. And I'm scratching my head wondering why. Now, I don't know the officer personally who opened fire and caused the death of Ashley Babbitt. I don't know. I don't know who he is. I mean, I've heard of his name. I think I saw him once on TV, but what I'm saying is I don't know him personally. But I've got to tell you, the American people deserve answers. And some of the questions I want answered, and hopefully maybe next week we'll have some of these answers, is who does he know? What training did he have? I'd like to see his performance evaluation reports. I mean, I'd like to see if this individual has a record of tremendous conduct, good conduct, or has a record where there may have been excessive force used 1, 2, 3, 4 times. You see, that's the troubling aspect of this committee. They seem to like shoot this whole thing away, to like push it out of the way. We're not concerned about the officer who shot her. Look I don't want to see the officer get in trouble. I don't want to see any cop get in trouble. But I want justice, folks. I want to make sure that the badge that I wore for 38 years and a badge that every cop wore is protected, not stained by politicians, not stained by political expedience. You know, that's what we're seeing in Canada. We got a bunch of politicians up there staining everything that they pass by. But the people will take care of that. And like I said, we'll talk about that Thursday night. But with regard to January 6th here in America, I'd like to know, I've got some questions that need to be answered. Who are you, Lieutenant? Who in the world are you? You're just one of those commoners, right? As Trudeau says, you're just a commoner. Well, I'm an American citizen, right? I have a right to know. I pay taxes. I certainly, if there's some officer who's working in any police department in the country who has a conduct that may cause the death of somebody, well, I want to know. I think we deserve to know. And if the officer is a good individual, never had a problem, and this is something that indeed was a tragedy that is maybe unexplainable, then I want to know that too. I think it'll give you some comfort. It'll give people some comfort and closure. But you see, this committee is only interested, again, in my view, as to what is politically expedient. And then they wonder why people don't trust government. How is it that these simple questions can't be answered? These aren't political questions, you see. These are questions that will seek and find facts. Facts are what cops look for. Facts are what cops want. Facts are what cops give prosecutors to prosecute. I haven't seen any facts yet. See a lot of political posturing, a lot of criticisms of the people who went there, criticisms of Trump, criticisms of conservatives. Seen a lot of politics. I am yet to see any facts that led up to this, that caused this. I'm not talking about political facts. I'm talking about real facts. Haven't seen them, folks. Maybe you have, but I haven't. The other thing is this. You know, for a few weeks now, we've been talking about due process in Canada, right? Pastors and moms and pops, truckers. I mean, law-abiding citizens are being locked up. I understand cops are now going to their homes and knocking on the door saying, hey, you're under arrest. What did I do? You were at the protest. What did I do at the protest? You showed up. You see, I don't want to see that happen here in America, but I understand that there are some people who were arrested on January 6th and their due process has been violated. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Okay? But I'll tell you this. If that is the case, even if that's a rumor, it should be investigated. And the people should know exactly what is going on. You see, here's the issue that I learned, folks, with regard to police work. If you're transparent, you know, in my police department, I was a commander of a criminal investigation division, and I was also the public affairs officer. And one thing our chief demanded was transparency with the public. Get accurate, credible, actionable information, and immediately, without compromising your investigation, give it to the public. What does that do? It prevents rumors. It prevents ridiculous theories running around the globe. It prevents a lot of distractions. and it gives people closure and comfort in a lot of different ways. So our government should be the same way, don't you think? Don't you think politicians should be transparent? Don't you think they should be giving the public information as quickly as possible? Well, we don't see that happening, do we? Going way back during the Eisenhower years, in fact, I was a little kid. I was about that big when Dwight Eisenhower was president in the 1950s. We had a lot going on with Russia back then. And that's another story a couple of weeks from now. But back then, a lot of problems with Russia regarding nuclear arm control, atomic bombs, hydrogen bombs. Eisenhower wanted to do many things, but the one thing he demanded when he was in the White House is to be honest, upfront, and transparent with the people as soon as possible. Well, do we have that today? We got a lot of tyrants running around doing a lot of hide and seek. But let me tell you something, folks, as I've said all along, these tyrants and these government people who think that they are now entitled to these offices, at least I could speak a little bit with authority here in the United States. I'm looking forward to November of 2022 because we're throwing them all out. They are going to be gone. Democrats, without a doubt. I believe that the Democrat has been taken over. The Democrat Party has been taken over by socialists and communists. And I could qualify that if I had time, and one night I will. But I also believe that the Republican Party has to stop the infighting. All this name calling going on. Give me a break. You know, Ronald Reagan had the 11th commandment. All right, thou shalt not speak evil of another Republican. Attack policies, but don't character assassinate the very person who could win a primary. And it might be you doing the name calling, and you're going to need their help. Fellow Republicans, fellow conservatives, just because they question a policy of another Republican doesn't make them a bad person. But you see, that's what goes on. Political expedience, self-preservation. To hell with Canada, to hell with America, to hell with all of you. I am going to get elected to office at all costs. That is what some may say is the perception of the people, whether they be in Canada, the United States, or anywhere else. Well, I've got news for you, politicians who say that. Perception is reality. And the reality that you are giving, whether you're a politician in Canada, the United States, Germany, Israel, wherever you're from, if that perception is out there, it is you. It is you who gave birth to that perception. So you need to step up, speak out, and be courageous. Finally make a stand. My goodness, the American government has dragged us down a road in this country where we may end up in a bloody war. I've said this over and over and over again for 1 month, for 1 year. Vietnam, Chapter 2. We lived this before. I do not want to sit in front of my TV tube watching television with a square box up in a corner with the body bags and the body count of American young men and women in a war we do not belong in. I'm all for sending arms, ammunition, whatever they need in Ukraine, you send it and they'll fight. They said they will. God bless them. They'll fight. They'll fight the enemies of their country. George Washington said, our first president, don't get involved in foreign wars for that very reason. Once we're involved, there's no way out. No way out. It's either win or surrender. Well, let's make sure we don't get involved. All right, folks, so that's it. So those are the questions regarding January 6th. Like I said, if you'd like to ask us some questions that you want us to ask on the air, us, like there are 50 people here talking to you. You want me to I like to be a little humorous. Well, if you'd like to have some questions answered on the air, by all means, I'll either put you on the air, all right, with me, or you could email me via campaign4america.com. That's campaign4america.com. Go to that contact bar. Bingo. Give us your email, your phone number, your name. And in the part where it says narrative, all right, put down what you would like. Would you like one of these free? All right, look at that. Strength for Mothers? Yep. Well, we're giving them away by the hundreds. Just let us know. We'll give this little prayer book for mothers, okay? You can put it in your pocket. It's yours for free. We give those away. If you'd like a question answered, if you'd like to be a guest, whatever you want, whatever you need, give us a little narrative and we'll do the best we could to meet your needs. That's it, folks. Well, I thank you all for joining me tonight. And let's keep on going. I've always said, folks, there's light at the end of the tunnel. No matter how dark it gets pretty dark, don't it? But we are the light of the world. We're the salt of the earth. Remember that. And through prayer, always remember prayer. Through prayer, supplication, and worshiping God Almighty. Remember, Jesus Christ died on that cross so that you and I could be here today to share with our children and grandchildren what freedom and liberty really is. Freedom and liberty is not only in the sense of what we have here in America, in Canada, and around the world, but how about freedom and liberty from sin, from depression, from distress? How about all of that? Well, that's what our mission is, isn't it? Thank you all for joining me tonight. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers. See you Thursday night as we welcome the great residents of Canada to join us. And we'll see you here in the United States and around the world next Monday night. God bless you and God bless the United States of America.